here to talk to you guys today about carrying concealed handguns and the permit required to do so legally. Now, my opponent's claim was that the government should abolish the right for citizens to carry concealed handguns because firearms in the hands of civilians pose a threat to the public. I will be refuting his secondary claims that 1, a firearm so closely kept hidden on a person is potentially dangerous. 2, concealed carry permits make it harder for police to identify perpetrators during shootings. And 3, allowances rates should filter out more people due to exemplary cases where suspicious characters are issued a license. So in response to the first claim that a firearm so closely kept hidden on a person is potentially dangerous, this is really a sweeping generalization because it really depends on the person. A psychopath or criminal with a gun is dangerous, but a healthy-minded, law-abiding citizen with a gun is not dangerous. And in fact, if law-abiding citizens were armed with guns, it could actually prevent dangerous situations from happening or escalating. And an example of where this could have happened would be in the 1999 Columbine shooting and the 2007 Virginia Tech shootings. If there were civilians there who were armed, they could have possibly ended the incident sooner and saved lives. But ultimately, psychopaths and criminals are going to use guns to commit crimes regardless of whether the government issues them a permit or not. And my opponent brought up the Tucson shooting, stating that more needs to be done to prevent assailants like Jared Loeffler from getting a hold of weapons. But according to a 2004 study conducted by the Federal Justice Department, 79% of criminals incarcerated for committing violent crimes with a firearm obtained the weapon illegally. 79% obtained the weapon illegally. So abolishing concealed carry permits will really only hurt law-abiding citizens, good people, rendering them defenseless against criminals who don't follow laws anyway. And the criminals will remain unharmed by the change of law. In response to the second claim that concealed carry permits also make it harder for law enforcement to identify the real perpetrators during a shooting, I'm unsure how this relates to concealed carry laws because if there was a shooting and the cops show up, whether or not someone has a permit is not really going to help the police identify the victim and the perpetrator. So I'm not sure how that relates. But I think it seems to be aimed more at gun restriction in general, but even then it's a stretch. It's purely hypothetical and it's highly unlikely. My opponent gave no evidence to support this claim, and I couldn't find any examples or evidence for this either. So my refutation to this claim is that it is false. Okay? In response to the final claim that allowances rates should filter out more people due to exemplary cases where suspicious characters are allowed a license, this is a policy claim, and I agree with it. I agree that states should try to filter out bad guys from getting permits, and in fact, states already do this. They do this by making people go through a lengthy, inconvenient application process that actually works very well in weeding out criminals from obtaining these permits. Without going into detail, the process kind of varies from state to state, but generally speaking, it consists of you have to take a course on concealed carry laws. You have to write a letter to get your, have your reason approved for getting one. Fill out an application, verify residency, get a background check, pay fees, and then you wait for all this to be, approved. So it is a lengthy process, and it does work fairly well. This is according to concealedguns.org. There's also a series of disqualifiers, like having a felony on your record and other things that prevent bad guys from becoming eligible. And ultimately, criminals probably aren't going to apply for these permits anyway, because generally speaking, they like to stay under the radar of police. So it's not really, it doesn't really make too much sense of that anyway. So to wrap it up, the government does not need to get rid of concealed carry laws because, for starters, guns are dangerous in the hands of criminals and psychopaths, but not regular, healthy-minded people. Secondly, law-abiding citizens with guns can actually prevent dangerous situations from becoming tragedies. And also, criminals disregard laws anyway, so abolishing the concealed carry permit laws will only hurt decent people who won't be able to defend themselves. But mostly, it is our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and I feel that concealed carry laws are a great way that we as American citizens can safely exercise that right. Thank you.
All right, you set up the claims very clearly. Your analysis of the evidence on the first couple of points could be a little bit more thorough. You have good evidence on your point of view, at least when it comes to the hypothetical that you're discussing. And then there's the discussion of the absence of evidence on the second point. That's a reasonable press to make. And I don't think anybody's going to remember the argument too much, so you might want to remind us a little bit of what actual proof they tried to provide. If there wasn't any, then say there weren't any cases, there wasn't a statistic here, there's no authority to reach this conclusion. Tell us how we would be able to remember the absence of material on that second point. On the third point, I thought you did a pretty good job explaining the filtering process and showing how it works. I think you could have a little bit more data on the effectiveness of that process, but it definitely applies to the advocate's claim. The best thing that you did in the speech was clarify what the advocate's argument was, and at the end of the speech clarify what your position is so that everybody can know, and we can do a contrast at the end. If I was listening to these two speeches back to back, which one seems to be easiest for me to follow, and then you would have yours laid out very clearly for the audience. Thank you.